Dr. Jean Harvey is professor and chair of the UVM Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences. And, I hope you brought your questions. There'll be plenty of time at the end. Enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks, sure. Hi, everybody. So, welcome on a beautiful Friday morning to sit inside with no windows and no light and no nap. Asked to talk about nutrition, exercise, and cancer in 35 minutes. So, I'm going to try to flip through this so we do have time for questions because it was hard to sort of smash it all in, but here goes nothing, right? I'm going to start with just some real basics, which is stuff that you've probably already seen before, but it bears repeating. That the guidelines right now for healthy diet are presented, at least the graphic is presented as a plate. We've been through the 4 food groups, and then we had the pyramid for a while, and now we've moved on, and we have a plate. And the plate looks like this. This is the New American Plate, right? And you can probably see, I hope, that the plate is 2/3 fruits and vegetables. And the rest is lean servings of protein with some dairy included, which is in stark contrast to the old American plate, which looked like this, right? So this was the plate that I had when I was growing up, certainly in my house, right? I know, see? We're all accustomed to this plate, and according to my father, the redder the meat, the better, right? Which is probably why I don't appreciate red meat at this point, because it was never really cooked all the way. So this is the old American plate. This is the graphic of the plate, just so that you can see what it looks like. Whole grains is another big emphasis right now. So fruits, vegetables, lean choices of protein, whole grains, and then appropriate servings of dairy. So there's no magic here, right? And I think that's kind of the message of the day. There's really no magic, unfortunately, in any of this. When you think about what you hear about diet and cancer, there is a lot of information about specific foods, nutrients, food components, antioxidants, phytochemicals, all that sort of thing, and the relationship to cancer. So this is going to get really simple because, unfortunately or fortunately, with few exceptions, studies of human populations have not yet shown definitively that any dietary component causes or protects against cancer. So that does not mean that you should not think about and focus on having a healthy diet, but this idea that there's some magic nutrient, there's some food that you should definitely never eat again because that's going to keep you from having a recurrence or getting cancer in the first place, or it's going to cure your cancer if you do this or you don't do this. From a dietary perspective, that's not necessarily the case. It doesn't also mean that we're not constantly evaluating nutrients and foods to see what's happening. And in fact, I want to show you that both the National Cancer Institute, and the website for this is cancer.gov, pretty easy to remember, right? And the American Institute for Cancer Research has on their website a lot of information about individual foods, individual nutrients, various components that you would basically consume. So things that you would put in your body on purpose, right? And so you can read all about the background research for each of these things. And, essentially, again, there's not anything magic about any of those. So the things in blue, the nutrients and foods in blue are things that they have yet to investigate, but they're on the list to look at. So if you go onto these websites, you can read, what the background information is, and you'll see things like, yes, for this particular kind of fruit or vegetable, there's evidence that in a petri dish, there might be some positive effect on a cancer cell in a petri dish. Or when we overfeed mice this thing, it's bad. But in humans that eat it in moderation, it seems to be okay. So you can read that level of detail about each of the different kinds of foods. And I would recommend looking at these websites whenever you're tempted to try to buy a bottle of something because you think it's going to fix something, right? So they're constantly updating their research on these things. So the bottom line is fruits and vegetables, really important, and whole grains. And that is just a very boring way to think about things, right? But there isn't any magic. The challenge, of course, is doing this, right? If this is not your eating pattern, The challenge is trying to figure out how to do it and how to shift your intake. So it's more about a behavioral shift, a food choice shift, than knowing what the right thing is, because the right thing is pretty simple to know. The other thing I think that gets sort of depressing is that people think, well, if that's, supposed to be my diet, am I doomed to a life of kale and Swiss chard or whatever, like the fancy new vegetable of the day is, or the ancient grains, quinoa and spelt, do I have to start eating amaranth, all that sort of thing? And the answer is no. You can still have some of your favorite foods, and in fact, I want you to know that July 21st is National Junk Food Day, so you have not missed anything. There's still a party to be had, right? But, it's probably more important to think about portion size. And, if we could just manage the amount that we eat, the portions of food that we eat, we wouldn't have to worry so much about the kinds of foods that we eat, right? So everything in moderation. But moderation is really hard. It's not part of our American culture to think about moderation, right? We want to know what one thing we can eat the most of and get away with it. We drive big cars, we have big houses. There's a lot of excess in our culture, right? So portion size is really important and hard to identify. So, when you go to a restaurant, for example, you're served a plate that looks like this, when in fact, according to the USDA and, what amount of food you need to be healthy, these are healthy portions of those foods, right? Okay, another example is this example I like to give about French fries, right? So this was in the old days of supersizing, okay? So the small fries here are 231 calories. That's a tiny little bag of French fries that you would get at McDonald's. The large fries are 500 calories, right? And a USDA portion of French fries is right here. This is one serving of French fries. It's 100 calories. Just like one serving of potato chips is about 10. It's about 100 calories, right? So when you even eat this tiny little bag, you're eating more than one serving of French fries. And that's fine as long as you know that it's more than one serving. And unfortunately, the problem is we don't know always what portion sizes are. So, the other thing that has happened to our food system is that portions have increased gradually over the last 50 years. And it's been so gradual that you weren't able to really tell what was going on. So, if you walked into McDonald's one day and you got a serving of French fries and it looked like this, and the next day you walked in and it looked like this, you would know that something happened, right? But it doesn't work like that. So they gradually increased over time for a variety of reasons. And unfortunately, this has happened for beverages and for things like hamburgers. Okay, this is kind of an egregious example of a hamburger that is not, one serving. So, but in 1957, a hamburger was an ounce. It was tiny. It was 200 calories. And now, your average hamburger is 6 ounces. It's 618 calories. So everything is bigger than it needs to be. And, the problem with this is that when we get served a bigger portion of something, regardless of what it is, we eat more of it. So there have been a number of studies that have looked at this with all different sorts of foods across all different population groups. So in this one particular example, people that were given a 1-pound bag of M&Ms ate more than those given a half-pound bag. So small bag, large bag. The people that got the small bag ate 71 M&Ms. The people that got the large bag ate 137 and therefore ate 250 calories more. So another lesson is that when foods are high calorie, you really need to pay attention to portion size, because a small error can create a lot more calories than if you overeat your carrots, right, at dinner. And this happens for a variety of reasons. We can't judge as easily the amount that we're taking out of a big bag as a small bag. We seem to be driven to finish things, right? So though there's just a few more, I'll finish what I've got here. There's some theory that if you buy a big bottle of soda and it's taking up room in your refrigerator, you just want to get rid of it, so you finish it, right? So it's better to think about, buying a single serving portion, because there's a beginning and an end. And you don't have to think about stopping yourself or counting the M&Ms or being obsessive in that way, right? The other thing, as I mentioned, is that, we eat out a lot. That's also part of our culture. And so when we eat out, we get served very large portions of foods. And what this slide is primarily about is that, in restaurants where they label the foods, the nutrients in the food. So you go sometimes, and there is a law now where, restaurant chains that serve more than X number of, people a year are supposed to label their foods. This was in Seattle, where the newspaper went around and grabbed some of these foods and had an independent lab reanalyze them and found that, for example, this macaroni or this skinny chicken dish was listed by the restaurant as having 6 grams of fat, and it really had 49, right? So, and that happens over and over again, 14 versus 35, 4.5 versus 20. So, you can't always trust that, and you might ask why, and it's because there's no one is checking up on this, right? So there's not an independent health department person who's going around and taking samples of these foods and sending them to an independent lab, right? So as long as you label, the assumption is you've labeled correctly. So the idea is to not go out as often as maybe you did because you don't really know what's in the foods you're eating. So in summary, portion sizes are bigger now than they used to be. They're bigger than we thought they were. Almost every food has been affected when you think about the sizes of chip bags and even cereal boxes, et cetera. We can't judge the size. So there have been studies, even with dietitians like myself, who are supposed to be trained to know what a serving is, and we can't tell either. So we're not very good at judging how big things are. And we tend to eat the whole thing. So again, in study after study after study, you give somebody a big bag of popcorn at the movies, they eat more than if you just give them the small bag, right? So we're not good at stopping. And then you have to ask the question, what's the contribution of portion size to weight gain or weight change or obesity and overweight? And there does seem to be a link. And, as you sit there and say, well, this is supposed to be about cancer, I will say I'm getting there. Aside from smoking, obesity and weight gain is the single most important way to protect your risk of cancer. So keeping your weight stable, keeping your weight healthy is related to your risk of a lot of different kinds of cancer. So, and in the blue are the cancers that you as men don't have to worry about, right? But there are some others. So, it is, being overweight is a risk for a number of chronic diseases, cancer being one of them, right? So, question? Or were you just holding your hand up in the air? Okay. How do you manage your weight? Well, this, I could talk about this for many hours, but let's just kind of hit the basics here with regard to diet and physical activity. Eat a diet low in caloric density, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Portion size, we just talked a little bit about that. Decrease intake of sugary drinks, and I'll show you some data about sugary drinks. And then physical activity, get enough physical activity. So I'm going to go through each of these briefly and hit the highlights. So energy density refers to the amount of calories in a portion of food. So if you want to eat foods that have low energy density, you're basically eating foods that have a lot more water or a lot more air, which really is fruits and vegetables. So there's one theory that suggests that we get used to eating a certain volume of food. We all are accustomed to a certain amount of food, right? And so it's really difficult if you're trying to cut your calories and still eat high-calorie food, you're going to wind up eating a very small amount or volume of food. So if you want to stick with the same volume or amount, you need to decrease the amount of calories in a bigger portion of food, and that involves eating more fruits and vegetables that are foods that have low caloric density. So if you look at the example here, this is high energy density food. This is 1575 calories worth of food, but so is this. So what would you rather? 2 bites of something or 10 bites of something else, right? So, but it involves shifting your food choices to foods that have lower caloric density. Another way to look at this, there was this book written, a number of books written called Eat This, Not That, that gives you very specific examples, what to substitute for what. And so this is a hamburger that has 600 calories in it, and this is a whole meal that has 600 calories in it. Okay? Some other examples are, this is 200 calories of melon. This is a lot of melon, right? This is 200 calories of cheese. This isn't very much cheese. Okay, it's probably 2 bites of cheese, 200 calories. This is a lot of celery, 200 calories worth of celery. Good luck eating this. where this is 200 calories of a candy bar. Good luck not eating this, right? So, 2 bites of a candy bar, 200 calories. You can make that choice, right? But again, if you think you're not going to be satisfied with 2 bites and you're going to want to eat the whole thing and you're trying to manage your caloric intake, it's worth thinking about substituting with some foods that have lower caloric density. Okay, what about portion size? I'll just mention this because we covered it a little bit. Because it's very difficult to know what a portion actually is, especially if you're out and you don't want to bring a food scale and measuring cups to a restaurant, right? Somebody has invented all of these little ways for you to, examples of different kinds of common household measurements or common devices to give you a sense of what a portion is. One of my favorites is, where is the hockey puck? Here's a hockey puck. So a bagel should not be bigger than a hockey puck. Okay, what bagel is small as a hockey puck these days? None, right? Okay, but that's what a bagel is. So again, you can eat a really big bagel, as big as a dinner plate, which is how big most of them are, but know when you do that, you're eating 2 bagels. Okay, as long as you know when you've made that choice. It's like the big cookies that you get, in the gas station, right, or the mini mart or whatever. Those are really big cookies. They're this big. They're probably 4 cookies. It's not 1, it's 4. So again, as long as you know, and that's what you choose to do, it's fine. So you can go online and just Google images of portion-sized charts. There's a gazillion of these. So, some of the hand measures, like this is supposed to be 3 ounces, the palm of your hand. So when you're out and you order a steak or a chicken breast or something, take a look at your hand, take a look at the portion, and you'll know. You never get served a portion that's as big as your palm, right? It's always way more than that. Okay, what about sugary drinks? Well, we eat a lot of sugar. We eat way too much sugar in this country and many other countries. We're actually not the best at eating sugar. There are other countries that are ahead of us for a change. We like to be the best at everything. We're not the best at this, but we're right up there. And it turns out that the contribution of sugary beverages to our diet is where we're getting most of our sugar. So this is 33% of our sugar intake is soft drinks. There's a lot of sweets and candy, but sweetened grains like desserts and breakfast cereals is another big category. But you see another 11% are fruit drinks, right? Milk products, chocolate milk, that kind of thing. So we're drinking a lot of our calories in the form of added sugar. And we think that that is also one of the reasons, one of the contributors to weight change. Across the last 50 years. We've all gotten a lot heavier, and this is probably why. Another reason, similar to the portion size concept, that we don't eat part of a portion, and there's some physiological reasons for that, we also know that our bodies don't register the calories from liquids in the same way that we do for solids. And so that's one of the other reasons why drinking your calories is so problematic. So this is an example of a study done, again, many studies done on this, where they took 2 groups of people and randomized them to either drink 450 calories a day from a soft drink, or they gave them 450 calories a day from jelly beans. So pure sugar, but you had to chew it and swallow it versus just drinking it. And what happened is the people that ate the 450 calories in the jelly beans compensated by eating less for the rest of the day, because they had had a meal of jelly beans already, right? The people that drank the soda didn't compensate for those calories. So our bodies don't register the calories from beverages in the same way that we do for the calories from solid food. And so we wind up adding soda calories on top of the calories that we're eating, and we don't eat less later on in the day. So that's the other reason that public health officials are going after soda, aside from the fact that it also gives us nothing but calories, right? There's no vitamins or minerals in soda. But it's also this reason. So, not to belabor the soda point, it is important, however, to point out that it's not just soda, it's other sweetened beverages as well. So even, these things like Powerade and Gatorade and Red Bull and Oh, Starbucks drinks are notorious, as you can only imagine. And this is Naked Juice, which is one of those, sold as healthy juices in the store, small container. It's blended fruit. It's almost like a smoothie in a bottle. 300 calories. Okay, so they're really high. And it's not that there's not some good stuff in them, but again, you're drinking those calories. You may not really think about it for the rest of the day. You certainly probably don't think about the fact that there's a lot of calories in this bottle because it's sort of labeled as this healthy thing. And there's probably a lot of sugar in it. May or may not be, but there's a lot of calories, right? So think about the calories that you're drinking, because that's an important thing as well. Okay, so what are the sugar recommendations? These are relatively new recommendations. 9 teaspoons per day of added sugar for men. That's the recommendation. No more than 5 teaspoons for women. And what is good news is that now food labels have changed. Finally, the FDA got the new food label law passed, and so food labels have changed so that they will be listing added sugars. Right? So I'm not talking about the sugar that's naturally occurring in foods, like the sugars that are in fruits or the sugar that's in milk naturally. This is added sugar. So you should be able to look at a label now and check this out. So the recommendation is no more than 150 calories per day for men of added sugars. So when you think about how much is in one soda, that pretty much does it for the day, right? So you wouldn't have any other sugar.
Do those new labels express that, though?
Added sugar. It will say.
Express it as teaspoons?
No. Mm-mm. Yeah.
So what would be the conversion?
For grams of sugar, I'm not sure what it would be. I don't know. Teaspoons, is it 9 grams in a teaspoon? I don't remember. Yeah. Okay. So Michael Pollan, says, eat food, mostly plants, not too much. Yes?
Similar
Yeah.
question. But Splenda, Equal, that kind of thing.
Fine.
Diet soda.
They're okay.
Good.
They're good.
Because now we don't have
You're good.
Sugars.
Exactly. So you can eat sugar substitutes if you wanted to do that. Yep, that would be fine. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes? Well, not cancer for sure. Right? I don't think that they're recommended as safe. The FDA has recommended them as being safe, so I think that you're fine with those. I think that one thing you have to watch is the sugar alcohols, mannitol, sorbitol, xylitol. They can cause some GI distress if you eat too much of them, but they are not usually present in things that you would eat a lot of. Okay, so what about physical activity? So the dietary rules are pretty simple, right? Simple to know, hard to follow maybe. Physical activity is another thing that is important, not only for weight management, and it is not, physical activity is not the biggest predictor of, not the biggest strategy to help you lose weight. Physical activity helps you keep weight off, but diet is much more meaningful when it comes to trying to lose weight. But physical activity is important for 1,000 reasons that don't have anything to do with weight management, right? So everybody should try to get some physical activity as part of their life. It helps with prevention of all sorts of chronic disease, certainly helps during cancer treatment if you have the energy, and if you don't, if you exercise, you might have more energy, right? Helps with cancer prevention, helps with prevent recurrences. So, how much exercise is enough? And so what we suggest is 30 minutes a day, or at least on 5 days out of 7 of the week. You should try to get 30 minutes of physical activity. And or there's another guideline now that suggests 10,000 steps is a reasonable goal if you're somebody that counts steps and you have a gizmo or a device that you wear that will count your steps. For weight management, there are different guidelines. You need to do a bit more, but I won't get too caught up in all of that. So 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity aerobic activity. So knowing what's moderate is a bit challenging, but if you are walking fast enough to be moderate, you can still talk to someone, but it might be a little challenging. Vigorous activity is where you're, moving fast enough that it's hard to talk to somebody. Okay. So if you do vigorous physical activity, you don't need to do as much. If you do moderate physical activity, you need to do a few more minutes of it. So it is related to the intensity of your workout, what the guidelines are. Activity should be performed in at least 10-minute bouts and can be spread throughout the week. So that's something that a lot of people don't know either, is they think, well, if I don't have 30 minutes, then I can't fit it in. Well, you can fit it in small bouts as well. You know, anything is better than nothing. And some people find that it's much easier to adhere to a physical activity recommendation if they think about chunking it up into small bits instead of trying to do it all at one time, and that's fine. You know, if you can, muscular strength and endurance is important, as is balance. If you can get to a place where someone can teach you how to do some balance exercises and also manage to lift weights and do some of that. Okay. The other thing that is an option is to just simply incorporate more activity into your life. And so there have been some studies done also in weight management and in the maintenance of weight loss that suggests that people that do what we call lifestyle activity versus programmed activity. So programmed activity is you join a gym, you go to a class, you set aside time during your day to get activity, versus you park farther away from the store and walk in, or you use the bathroom that's, you know, in the upstairs of your house, or you know, get out of your car to open the garage door versus, you know, hitting buttons for everything, right? So some of that is lifestyle activity. So that counts too. You can also just incorporate more activity into your life. Walk to the store, walk to the post office if that's possible. It's hard in Vermont. You know, we don't live in an urban environment. Take the stairs, not the elevator. Those kinds of things. Also, you know, there's increasing emphasis on sedentary behavior, and so not being so sedentary simply, and that doesn't mean that you can't sit and you should be moving all the time. It means that you should watch less television. You can stand up from time to time. You know, there is evidence that even people that do the right amount of physical activity, you know, let's say you go out for a run in the morning and you run for an hour, if you then sit for the entire rest of the day, that's still bad because you're too sedentary, right? So, you know, it was sort of a blow to all of us who managed to fit physical activity into our life to then go, are you kidding me? I have to do more? Like, now I have to stand up at work. So what are we doing? We're standing up at work, right? So we all have standing desks and we take more breaks. And, you know, there's apps on your phone that you can get to beep at you every 30 minutes. So you stand up and you know, so you realize how long you've been sitting. When I sit in my office at UVM and I'm really like concentrating on something, sometimes I will be so still that my lights will go out in my office because, you know, it's on one of the motion sensor things, and I literally realize that I have not moved. You know, I'm sitting at my keyboard just typing away, and my lights actually go out. So that's pretty bad. So I had a doctoral student who did a study on television viewing in adults. One of the only studies still that I've seen on this concept. It's been done in kids, but not in adults. And what she found is that if we decreased the amount of television time that people got to watch in a week, if we cut it by 50%, they got more physical activity. And we never told them to do more physical activity. We didn't know when we did this if the TV shut off, if all they would do then is just sit quietly and read a book or knit or go to bed, you know. And they didn't. They moved around a bit more. So just taking sedentary behavior out of your life seems to increase light physical activity. So they said to her, well, they took the dog for an extra walk because they couldn't watch television. They did their laundry because they couldn't watch television. It was just sort of puttering around, but at least it was more activity. So think about the big blocks of time in your life that you're sedentary and try to do something about that as well. The other thing to think about is, and there's been some research on calorie labeling of foods in stores that suggests that just seeing a calorie label on a food is not as meaningful as a label that says, for example, if you eat this ice cream cone, you have to jog for 41 minutes to burn it off, right? It's at least been meaningful for adolescents when they label foods this way. You know, calories are kind of a nebulous concept to some people, but you know, it is really difficult to exercise off all of the food that you're eating. You'd have to be running almost all day long, depending on what you chose to eat. So, you know, if you walk 3 miles per hour, you have to walk for 72 minutes to burn off a strawberry shake. Okay, so you might think to yourself, is it really worth it? You know, do I really want this? Okay. So you can't out-exercise a bad diet is sort of the message, right? So, think carefully about how much activity you would have to do in order to burn off those calories. Okay. So in summary, this has all been pretty simple and basic. Eat a diet high in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. That's really the best science that we have right now. Don't take supplements unless they've been recommended by your physician. And if you want to take a supplement, please check with your physician. All of the data that suggests that fruits and vegetables are helpful for cancer, all of the data on phytochemicals and antioxidants really comes from eating the food, not taking a pill, right? Okay? There are very few exceptions to that. So, diet is complicated in that we know there is potentially an issue related to eating foods in combinations and, the fact that you're eating the whole food, and there's still probably components in some of the fruits and vegetables we have yet to identify. We might think it's the vitamin A, but in fact it's something else that's in there. So eat the food. Don't take supplements unless they've been recommended to you, and if you do, tell your doctor. Strive for healthy weight the best way that you can, and get enough exercise. And these are the two institutions I told you about that would have really, really good up-to-date information on very specific, brand new ancient grains and fruits and vegetables and antioxidants and all sorts of things if you really wanted to read specifically about each individual one. Okay, questions? Yes?
Healthy weight.
Yes.
What kind of striving might help me? I have a huge problem putting on and keeping on weight.
Well, that depends specifically on what you've tried already. But the things that we suggest for weight gain, eating frequent meals, eating high-calorie food. So you need to sort of reverse, all these things I said. Things that are high in fat, healthy fats, olive oil, polyunsaturated fats, vegetable oils. There are some reasonable supplements. I used some of them when I was trying to gain weight back after I had cancer. So Ensure and what did I drink? Boost. Lots of calories, really small container. So if you have trouble with volume, which is what I was experiencing, a chocolate boost is literally this big, and there were like 360 calories in it.
One of the challenges, part of that for me is diabetic too.
Ah.
So I find that there are things that will give me the weight at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, so this one, I know Glucerna has some shakes, and Glucerna is another supplement that you could try. So some of the boosts were high in protein, and so the mixture of the protein with the sugar might keep your blood sugar more stable. So you could work with that. If you eat foods high in fat, though, without sugar, you're going to be okay because fat is not going to spike your blood sugar. So protein and fat are better for you than trying to eat a lot of carbohydrate. But it is tricky. Yes, it is very tricky. Yes. Yes.
I enjoy mixed nuts also.
Yeah, good.
Almonds, pecans,
Yep.
and walnuts
Yep.
for snacks.
Yep.
What's too much?
Ah, right. Well, they're good snacks, by the way, because they've got protein, they have some fat, so they keep you from getting hungry. I would say too much is more than a serving. So at a time. It depends, again, on, well, it's not a too much, right? It's a moderation thing. And if you, if you choose to eat your calories in nuts, you're not going to be able to eat something else, right? So if you're trying to fit in enough fruits and vegetables to be healthy, and you want other foods as well, then you can't have as many nuts. Nuts add up really quickly. Doesn't mean they're not a great snack. They are, but they're one of those. Be careful of the portion because just a handful over is going to be 100, 150 calories, right? Yep. Yep.
If you are overweight, as I am, what is the current thought about the kind of physiological feedbacks that I've heard that you're kind of locked in to that weight, and trying to reduce that invokes a series of physiological responses
It
to
does.
counteract that,
It does.
it makes it difficult to
It
lose
does. It is, it can be difficult. It's not difficult to lose, it's difficult to keep it off, I think. And it's complicated in that what tends to happen is when people lose weight, they then want to go back to the way they used to eat because now they've lost the weight. Well, you know, when you lose weight, you basically have to keep eating the way that you were eating in order to maintain the weight. So some of it is behavioral fatigue, to be honest.
psychological, but there was a physiological.
There is a physiological, yeah. So, but I would say that people have have lost weight and kept it off. You have to be more diligent about your calorie intake. There is some evidence that you need to probably eat. So if you lost 20 pounds, for example, I could look at your body weight. I could figure out the amount of calories that you probably needed at that weight to stay the same. But if you've been a formerly heavy person, I probably have to subtract even more calories from that. So you probably have to eat a little bit less than a person of the same size who didn't have to lose weight, right?
So just a follow-up, and I, understanding from what you just said, that there's no one recommendation you could give about caloric intake, that you really need to do that on an individual
You do.
where they're starting with.
Exactly. And the other thing, so I do obesity treatment research, right? So what we do is when people get to their goal weight or whatever weight we think is reasonable, we have them add back 500 calories a week, and then we look at the scale. So it's all about what happens to the scale, right? So I could give, you know, people that are exactly the same size, same height, same sex, you know, the same calorie weight loss recommendation, and some would lose faster than others, some wouldn't lose at all. It also depends on how much exercise you're willing to do. You know, essentially what we say is if you're doing the right behaviors, you're exercising, you're eating a reasonable diet, your weight is what your weight's going to be, right? It's just really what you're willing to put up with. And some people are willing to put up with a lot to keep their weight lower than it might be normally. It's really up to you. Yes? Yep. So VTrim is me. I am VTrim. And VTrim is now with EarthLogic, and we're relaunching the website, and EarthLogic is recreating VTrim. So we got the university, you know, we licensed it, and that was a mistake. And so it's back now at the university, so we are hopefully going to start it again. My hope was that it would be ready in the fall, but it's taking a little bit longer. But it will be amazing, and it will be mobile enhanced, and so you can do it on your phone, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
So this is a program.
It's a behavioral weight management program, yes, that, yes, can you sign up for it? The original impetus was to have it mostly at the university for, yes, for staff and faculty and students. Yes, good. So, and then I think we'll slowly consider taking it out because, you know, honestly, I'm an academic, I'm not a business person, so I wanted it back at the university. I didn't necessarily want to launch it big, but I think EarthLogic is interested in that and they may be able to help with it, so.
When might we look for it at UVM?
You know, what we have done in the past is we've announced it on the UVM website when it's available, so you would see that. And again, I was hoping that it would be ready by fall. I'm not entirely sure where they are with it. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
Quote, get enough exercise. What does that mean for me in terms of finding, where do I go to get a better feel for get enough exercise? Example, you know, when I talk to my physician, that physician says, well, you know, at 73, you're really looking great. You should compare yourself with other 73. Well, that doesn't work. You know, I used to be a 3-day week in the gym, martial arts, etc. Not everybody is 3 days in the week in the gym and martial arts, etc. So I need a different kind of feedback for me to be accurate and focused and healthier. So where do I go to get that kind of guidance? Because I'm not getting it from my physician.
Yeah, well, I don't think that there's any age restriction on the recommendation. So I would still say 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, less if you're doing something vigorous. I don't think there's any difference in what I presented and you, right? I think if you have weight issues, though, then you specifically want to balance the amount of activity you're getting with your ability to maintain your weight. So you might have to work harder to eat those extra calories we just talked about if you want to burn them off, but there's no, right? There's senior Olympics, for heaven's sakes, right? I'm sure there's 73-year-olds that are out there running around the track. So exercise, it's good for you.
Yeah, I did that before I had hip replacement, not running.
Okay. Do you swim? You can swim.
What about, and what is the difference between stationary bicycle and bicycling around?
So when you're trying to figure out calories expended, I'm not sure that's what you're interested in, but your weight is supported on a bicycle, whereas when you're walking, you're pushing your weight across a distance, and so it's going to burn more calories for the same distance. But a stationary and an outside bike are not going to be all that different, right? You're sitting and pedaling, you're sitting on the seat. It depends a little bit on the tension, but it's really about time and pedaling. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, thank you. Have a great day.